We are now live. Evening, Mr. Chair. We are live and I believe, have enough members to satisfy a quorum whenever you're ready to call the meeting.
All right, just give me one moment.
Okay.
All right, welcome. I call to order the January 2022 meeting of the Alexandria Transit Company Board of Directors. I'm not at Dash tonight, so I don't have the lovely pictures in the background of happy people on the King Street trolley, but I'm doing it from home and seem to have a better internet connection. So I'm grateful for that. I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday and wish you a happy new year. And it's good to see everybody here. So we'll go ahead and read the public meeting notice.
Due to the COVID-19 pandemic emergency, this meeting of the Alexandria Transit Company Board of Directors is being held electronically, pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3708.2, A.3, the Continuity of Government Ordinance, adopted by the Alexandria City Council on June 20, 2020 to undertake essential business. All members of the board and staff are participating from remote locations through a Zoom meeting. This meeting continues to be held electronically, unless a determination is made that it is safe enough to be held in person, at the Alexandria Transit Company Boardroom, 3000 Business Center Drive, Alexandria, Virginia. Electronic access will be provided in either event. The meeting can be accessed via Zoom and Facebook, and recordings are posted on YouTube and the Dash website. Public comment will be accepted via Zoom. A Zoom registration link is available on the Dash website. Alternatively, requests for public comment can be made during the public comment period by utilizing the raise hand feature. This meeting is being recorded.
All right, Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Chair Kaplan.
Here.
Vice Chair Kleist.
Present.
Linda Bailey.
Present.
Larry Chambers. Brandy Collins. Here. Ian Greaves. Ian Greaves.
Was here a moment ago.
Matt Harris.
Here.
Jim Kapsis. Hillary Orr. Ajayesha Thomas.
All right, Larry and Ajayesha had both indicated that they would need excused absences tonight.
Chair Kaplan, you have a quorum. Those absent are Larry Chambers, Ian, I guess, he was on earlier, and Jim Kapsis and Ajayesha Thomas.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. We will move into the public comment portion of the meeting. So there is a, this is a reminder for the public meeting rules for us in terms of having video on when we are deliberating. And then a reminder for the public as to how they can participate in this portion of our meeting where we always take comments on any transit related matters that riders or residents wish to bring to our attention. We also have, of course, our email address, the dashbus@alexandriava.gov, which is the fastest way to get service and any Dash related issue resolved, because we have dedicated customer service agents who are ready and waiting to assist in resolving any service related concerns. So I'll go ahead and ask staff if we have any speakers who have signed up for public comment, and then note that for anyone who hasn't and wishes to participate, that you can either raise hand in Zoom to let us know that you wish to be recognized. We'll take anybody who registered first. And 3-minute limit, and we have this helpful timer on the screen that will allow you to keep track of where you are in your comments.
Mr. Chair, Whitney is off this evening, so I'm going to stand in for her in regards to the submitted comments, and I will note on my screen here whether any attendees raised their hand. We had a submission from a Denise Rabati. This was a written comment. She does not appear to be registered or on the Zoom. Her submission notes as follows. I would like to know if the network is going to get fixed to care for the North Van Dorn corridor. And secondly, inquiring as to the status of the receipt of an email to Martin Barna. I can speak to both of these. This resident had also managed to touch base with us, so these may be old comments. It's not clear to me, but we have spoken with her about the North Van Dorn corridor service and the alternative that is in place there in lieu of the AT5 service that was removed from that corridor, the Metrobus 7A route, which was recently enhanced in December to provide more frequent service, is the new alternative for residents along that corridor. And Martin did confirm that he has been in touch with this resident.
Thank you,
The
Josh.
second, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
The second submission is unclear. We're not sure. It is an Elizabeth Griffin. However, the note that was associated with it doesn't make any sense. So it may have been an error or a missubmitted. So there isn't any information there to share. I am now observing the attendee list just to confirm that none of these individuals are in fact here, or if there are any with a raised hand. Mr. Chair, of the attendees present, none have raised their hands, so I have no further submitted public comment.
Go ahead and close public comment period. Thank you, Josh. So we'll move into the chair's, review and consideration of the meeting minutes for December, which were included in our meeting packet. Are there any revisions or additions to the minutes as they were presented? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to adopt them.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the minutes from our December meeting.
Moved by Matt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Steve. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, passes. Thank you. Chair's report. So I've already wished all of you happy holiday greetings, and I hope your year is off to a sound start. The main announcement that I have regarding Dash Business is that we were notified yesterday of the tentative date of the stockholders meeting, which is, as you know, has to be held annually in order to transact certain business related to the Alexandria Transit Company to continue to exist as a corporation. And so our bylaws state that we each serve one-year renewable terms that have to be renewed by the city council as the stockholders at that meeting, and then approval of the outside auditor of our books, which is always the same auditor who does the city's books, and then any other business that we wish to bring forward. So on the screen, and I'll address this in a minute, is a bylaws change that we discussed in December that I would like to send to the stockholders, and we'll vote tonight on whether to approve that. But we have a rather tight turnaround in order to provide the city with information for the stockholders, basically our meeting slides and the agenda for the meeting. It has to go up to them by Tuesday. And so what that means is that I need to know for our citizen board members whether you want to serve another term on our board, and I hope all of you do. But this would be the time to let us know, and I will send a note probably to all of you just to make sure I capture our members tonight who are not present, so they know about this as well, so they can let us know. You can send it to me, and I'd ask you to CC Beth as well, because she's going to be doing the docket, and that way, with the tight turnaround, that there's not a chance that I get an email from you and then we miss it, and we want to try to minimize having to go back to the city manager's office to revise the docket. So give that some thought. I hope all of you are finding this to be a rewarding experience, and that we can continue on in our work of making Dash and transit in this city really work very well for the residents. But if you do want to step down, please let me know by the weekend so that we can move forward with that. Are there any questions about that so far? Okay. And then the other piece of this, so a bylaws change that I want to send forward, has to do with the composition of our board. And so just to recap what we discussed in December, several years ago, I think it was 2012, the city basically, the city manager at the time asked the stockholders to amend the composition of our board to include more city staff and to change some of the requirements from what had just been citizen members and riders to include specific citizen members with specific expertise, one of which was a transportation expert and the other was a finance expert. I am asking that we remove the requirement that we have a citizen member who has financial expertise and experience, and that we reallocate that as a straight citizen seat. We would retain the city, the designation that we have at least one city resident who is a transportation expert. We don't currently, and I had asked in December, it was my understanding, because I was involved in the recruitment for everybody who serves on the board now, that none of us were financial experts, but I had asked if anyone felt that they met that requirement to let me know between meetings, because although I still would recommend that we remove it, I wanted to know when I report to the stockholders that we don't have a member with financial expertise. And I wanted to know if that was indeed correct. No one had come forward to self-identify as being that person. So I'm going to assume, because I didn't hear from anyone, that that is the case, that we do not currently have a resident with financial experience. So that means the next time we have to do, if this were to stay in, the next time we would do a board recruitment for a citizen, we would only be able to consider candidates who had financial expertise. And that's the concern, especially given what we heard from council a couple of years ago as the stockholders, that the most important thing they wanted to know is that we had a board that resembled the community, and we're bringing forward all of the concerns that are involved in running a transit system. And so by being overly restrictive in who we can appoint, it makes it harder for us to meet that requirement. And so that's the thinking behind removing the financial experience requirement. And I would also note that when the city made their changes, that they required at least one city staff member, and you can see it here on the screen, who is either the city's chief financial officer or designee, who is a financial expert. And we have Dr. Greaves as our city controller, who sits in that role. And at times, the city manager, because the city manager controls 3 seats, we've actually had 2 financial experts on the board. At the time when serving alongside Ian, we also had Lisa Henty, who at the time was the deputy director of OMB. So we feel that the city, can make adjustments in their seats if necessary, if they feel that we need more financial expertise. And we want to just have as broad an ability to recruit people who would be good additions to this board and want to serve on this board. So that's what I hope to take to the stockholders next month. I will go ahead and open this for discussion, and then we will need a board motion to approve this if that's the wish of the board. Does anybody want to be heard on this? Okay, I'm not hearing anyone, so I would ask then if there is a motion to approve the bylaws change.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the bylaws change as outlined in your slide.
Moved by Matt. Is there a second?
My second.
Second by Jim. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed or any abstentions? All right, this motion has passed, so this will be included on the docket that goes up to the stockholders in February. And Jim, I don't know. I know you weren't on when we called the roll. Did you? Did you hear my report in terms of the scheduling of the stockholders meeting? And
I did not.
Oh, okay. I'll just very quickly recap. The stockholders meeting is scheduled for February 8th, and we as board members, our terms are up, and we will go through renomination at that point. We have to send our docket up to the city by Tuesday to meet that February 8th deadline. So I'm asking board members to let me know if for some reason they don't wish to serve again by the weekend, and also to CC Beth as well, because she'll be creating the docket. Matt, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, Dave, is the meeting in person or is it virtual?
Well, that's a good question. I know council would be in person, but I actually don't know how we would present. Josh or Beth, do you have, has the city said anything about that?
It hasn't been clarified to us.
Well, may I
sorry.
interrupt 1
Yeah, go
second?
ahead. Yeah.
Okay, as of right now, it's all in person, but they will update me if that changes, and I suspect it will.
Thank you.
So council would be in person. We would be expected to right now as well to be presenting on these items in person as opposed to.
Right. That's
Okay.
my understanding at this point.
Okay. So we will, and of course, as we know more, we'll let you know. The other piece of this is that we have a new city manager who starts next week. And so we don't expect that change in the manager's office will affect the creation of that docket, but it could. And, you know, certainly I know Josh is going to be involved in some onboarding for the city manager because he'll need to become familiar with the structure of the ATC and how we manage the bus system, because very early on this stockholders meeting will occur. And so we want to make sure the city manager understands the setup of the organization and why we do business the way we do. The other thing I just wanted to touch on in my report, and I say at the outset that, you know, it has to do with the response to snow that we had last week. And I say at the outset, understanding a couple of things. Number one, that our TNES staff is asked to do a tremendous amount with very limited resources and responds to a very high level of demand from residents and businesses here, and responds to that very well. And also has the added burden right now of dealing with, as every organization is, high levels of COVID cases and exposures that resulted in employees quarantine and shortages in staff being able to respond. But I have not had to say this in a few years, but I feel necessary to bring up that it concerns me as we look, and I try to navigate around the city and others who depend on transit and use buses, that for days after we have had a snowstorm, that many of our bus stops and paths that access our bus stops, so for example, curb cuts, remain blocked because when the city clears snow, it's pushed to the side of the street, and so often then stacked up in front of transit stops, which even once we're able to get our transit system running again, and I know the city, and Josh told me that, you know, TNES was extremely responsive to needs that we had in terms of being able to get back to snow emergency and then getting back to servicing all routes, which is critical. But there are serious accessibility and safety concerns for reaching transit stops. And I've brought this up, and in the past, you know, when we've had serious storms, it's been a few years since we've had one. And, you know, Josh and I were talking a little bit, and I know that he has talked with TNES in the regular coordination meeting specifically about equipment that Dash has or might be able to purchase that would help with buses that get stuck, that they're able to position that and have that available to help to get transit from essentially blocking streets or people getting stuck on buses, which is critical. But I'd like to ask the question specifically, as we will have conversation later in the spring about overall transit stop accessibility, that as the city goes through after action planning following the storm, can we look at strategies for making sure that we can prioritize clearing of transit stops? Because I also understand that the city has to get roadways clear, which also is critical to us, critical to Metro buses, critical to any mobility. But you know, how we then get to a point where we can also clear some of our key transit stops and pathways to those transit stops, so that all of our residents can safely use transit and not face several additional days of significant barriers to reaching transit. And I also say this as somebody who has fallen at a bus stop after a significant snow, when there was a large snowbank and freezing rain had come down over it and basically coated the whole thing in ice. This was about 12 years ago on Washington Street. Thankfully, I wasn't seriously hurt. But you know, it did really raise to me, and you know, as I was going through that, pondering what that experience was like. So I just want to tee that up as something to see what we can discuss, and perhaps ask Hillary if, you know, she had an idea for how we can proceed with that kind of conversation.
Thank you for this. I think it definitely is a priority, and I understand the woes of falling. I slipped on ice in my driveway and busted up my knee just a couple days ago. So, you know, it is treacherous everywhere when we have these snowstorms. I think one of the things that would probably be helpful is for us to figure out, and I think our team can work with Josh's team to kind of prioritize bus stops and high ridership stops, and I think, you know, that always makes things easier when we have a priority list and we know where the key locations to go to first, because when we come at it as every location's the exact same priority, then nothing's going to get done. Not nothing, but less will get done than if we say like, these are really, really high priority locations for us. And then after you get to those, kind of moving down a list, which is the same thing we do with plowing our streets. So that's something I think we could work together to kind of come up with a list and then figure out how to move from there. But definitely prioritizing is going to be helpful.
Is there a resource? I mean, obviously you don't have infinite, which is why you're asking for high priority lists, but given current resources, is that something that is doable, say within 48 hours after a storm like the one we had last week, to be able to get to that? Or
probably not within 48 hours of a storm that we had like this. I mean, I think we haven't had a storm like this in quite a while. So, you know, these storms plus COVID, I mean, maybe at a normal time we could, but just having so many people out, it just definitely was not something that was doable with this storm. Our teams were just out for full force, and, you know, working a lot of overnight shifts and whatnot. But I think we could talk about what reasonable expectations could be based on the level of storm.
all right, well, that's, I mean, that is very encouraging. And, you know, Josh, you and I can talk some more about, I'd like to hear, you know, how those conversations go, and, you know, and as we prioritize and look at some of our stops that could be cleared, I think anything we can do is going to be very helpful to people who do need to rely on the bus. And I know, you know, commend our Dash staff for working so hard along hand in hand with the city to make sure we could get service back as quickly as we did after the storm. But, you know, we also have to think about then how people are getting on at the stops and off at the stops, and then, you know, what conditions they're waiting and navigating there. And so I appreciate the comments and look forward to more discussion about that. Sorry, I muted myself too quickly. I'll go ahead and recognize you for the TNS report. That concludes what I had.
Thank you. And good evening, everyone. Welcome to 2022. Let's hope this year is maybe a little bit better than the last one. Not off to a great start so far, but okay. So just to give you some updates from TNES, Duke Street in Motion. I know this is one that it's such a big project for us and for transit in the city. I'm going to keep updating you each month on this one, but where we are with this project, we have published the summary report from the data that we received, mainly in all the feedback that we received from the community when we did our outreach push and events back in the summer. And we posted those to the project website. I think, you know, we took this data and looked at it and kind of combed through it a number of different ways. And some of the things that we found, you know, we didn't overall look at this and we're like, oh, people aren't talking about transit, they're talking about cars and traffic. And so we kind of went through the data and looked at a number of, you know, split it in different ways, looking at what homeowners said versus what people that ride transit said versus what renters said. So we tried to break the data out in a way that shows what people who are actually using transit are saying versus people who maybe don't take transit and drive, and the priority on the corridor for them is the traffic congestion, which is also a prior, you know, it's something that's important for moving buses as well. So it all comes into play. But we have posted that on the website. I put some key highlights in the notes for you all if you're interested. The next steps with this, we are going to have vision and guiding principles, some drafts coming out based on all the engagement that we've done with the community that will help inform what the concept designs for the corridor look like. And we'll be diving into those with the community starting this spring. We will also this spring be appointing an ad hoc advisory committee for this project. So if anyone is interested, I can continue to update you on that. I don't have an exact timeline yet. And the new city manager will be doing those appointments. Okay, next on the list is our city DOT paratransit program, which I also owe you all a full report on this program, but our new contracts are taking longer than planned. So I want to make sure those are in place before I give you a full report. But I do have an update that beginning January 1st, all the trips within the city became free. So trips outside of the city are still $4 for, I think, 5 miles outside the city, and then $6 for more than that. But because Dash went fare free, and that is our fixed route system, and our paratransit is a requirement of that, Dash is fare free means that Paratransit's fare free. Paratransit cannot charge more than 2 times the amount of the fixed route system. So with that, we are actually going through and refunding customers who paid for trips within the city between September 5th and December 31st as well. That's when Dash went fare free. We have next on the list, we have our DRPT state aid grants that the city will be applying for. So on January 25th, we'll bring those to council for consideration. These are the grants that we apply for both capital and operating assistance. They're grants that basically we submit, 1, how much we spend on our transit system, and 2, how much we spend on our new buses, replacement buses. And those funds then come back to the city as a formula, and those go straight into our MBTA account that pays for, MBTC account that pays for typically our WMATA bills. But it is kind of an offset of the money that we have to pay from our general fund, and the percent changes slightly every year. So we don't know exactly what we'll get back, but these are the similar grants that we put forward each year. And then lastly, just quick updates on WMATA service and the COVID response. So as Dash is also experiencing, there are shortages due to COVID for drivers, and WMATA January 10th, which was Monday, I believe, shifted back to a Saturday supplemental schedule until further notice. And then for rail, the update is that they paused the return of the additional 7,000 series rail cars to passenger service. So that basically means that the yellow and blue line service is going to be continuing to operate at 20 to 24-minute headways. Lastly, just that WMATA announced that they have weekly testing requirements that will remain in place for unvaccinated employees, and that beginning on January 16th, employees who have failed to comply with this will be placed on unpaid suspension. So WMATA is doing their best to to contain COVID, just like Dash and other transit systems are. But with that, happy to answer any questions about any of these updates.
I had one on the Duke Street regarding the ad hoc group. Is there expected to be kind of a composition of that group that will be announced, and is that going to rely heavily on appointees of certain boards and commissions? So I'm asking, should our board prepare to solicit a volunteer, basically? I know you asked if anyone was interested, but should our board be prepared to solicit a volunteer, for example, to serve, or would that come from the Transportation Commission?
We are still working on what the composition of that group would look like. We want to hear from different voices. And so, a lot of our ad hoc groups, when we pull from boards and commissions, we're having the same people. So there'll definitely be board and commission representation on there. I'm not sure whether Dash will be one of those boards. We also want to keep the group to a manageable number. So I'm not sure what the composition is going to be, but I will certainly let you all know as soon as I do.
Okay. Yeah, I think it would be great for one of our members to potentially. I know we have people who live near that corridor, so it would be great for us to have some representation on that group, and as the city works through that. Well, thank you.
And regardless of whether we have an appointee from Dash, there are certainly going to be positions for citizens who ride transit and other things like that. So there's definitely opportunities.
Great, and maybe even, reaching out to the, our rider advisory group as well. Potentially, this could be a great source for.
Yes, we plan to do that as well. They are one of the groups listed tentatively for participation.
Great. Thank you for your report. So now we have the letter regarding the 11Y, which was a matter we had discussed in the fall about a route that basically runs from Mount Vernon through the city on Washington Street, and in its former iteration went into the District of Columbia during rush hour. And the route had been changed significantly. And so we had expressed some interest as a board in advocating, because the city also was planning to advocate to bring this route back in the way it looked, particularly as it used to provide a redundancy when Metro Rail was shut down or having challenges. And I think in some ways we feel the absence of that route going all the way into the district as opposed to terminating at Braddock Road, and we have reduced headways. So Hillary, I appreciate you bringing forward this letter. I'll let you address it if
I am actually going to let Jen Schlesinger, who is with our transportation planning team and is our regional coordinator, address the letter, as she knows way more details than I do and can answer all of the questions about WMATA.
Sure. I think we provided a summary of the WMATA budget in the last month's packet. But basically, there's a lot of peak period routes that aren't running today, well, even last week before the COVID changes in the FY22 budget, and those are being planned to be continued for FY23. Staff determined that the 11Y might be the most logical to try to advocate to get it returned. We're mindful that in FY24, WMATA is projecting a really large budget gap, so we're trying to be strategic about the types of routes that should be returned. But given that the Yellow Line Bridge is going to be shut down for 4 months, probably in late fall of this year, and then also just given the delay of the Potomac Yard Metro station opening, this route seems to provide a good mitigation for those elements. The letter recognizes that the 11C ridership, which is one of the points that the WMATA makes, isn't very high. This is the abbreviated route that eliminates the last stop in Alexandria and terminates at Braddock. But given what's going on 7 South series, the Omicron variant, all these things that we hope will be addressed by the start of fiscal year 2023, we think that we can generate more ridership on the 11Y. The FY23 budget also introduced several and to try to induce ridership. A lot of them are pretty minimal cost, and WMATA isn't actually projecting induced demand from them, which hopefully it would receive. But this letter highlights the value add bonus, where for every $25 a rider adds to a Smart Trip card, they would get a $5 bonus, which has an $8 million cost in the budget. So since we're proposing to bring a route back and imagine that maybe other jurisdictions will as well, we thought that this might be an area that they could consider to help with funding. Also, the Yellow Line Bridge project might be able to absorb some of this as part of their capital, as part of their normal mitigation efforts. So we just want to provide some options for how to fund this service. So I think that summarizes the letter and some background if anyone has any questions.
So Jen, the city is advocating for this as well. Is this letter basically in line with what anyone else is sending from Alexandria in terms of this template, or was this written, specifically for us?
Well, you guys are first. The public comment period actually doesn't officially start for a little bit, so we haven't. We're going to the Transportation Commission next week and getting their input before drafting a letter. We know that this board is specifically interested in the 11Y, but I think this generally supports what staff and council are at this stage.
I don't know about others. I remember a value add bonus that existed a long time ago on Metro. It's been many years since we've had it. And ridership was very strong after it went away. But I guess I don't know, I guess I don't know enough about it to say that I've said this is basically something that I'm not convinced it would have a significant impact on ridership, because I don't really know what WMATA is predicting would happen as a result of it. So I'm also wondering if we can be perhaps agnostic on where the funding should come from at this point, because WMATA hasn't officially announced their budget. So I don't know if you could comment a little more on that or.
Sure, no, that's definitely an option. They have announced that their budget. They just haven't officially started the public comment period. Okay. So they have, so they haven't projected expected ridership from any of the discounts that they're proposing, because there's so many unknowns, is what they're saying. So actually tomorrow, if y'all are interested, there's a 9 o'clock WMATA board meeting where they're having a work session to discuss the budget. So I guess, so they have a proposed budget. They haven't finalized all of the terms that they're going to be putting out for public comment. So that is a good point. Yeah, so I think given that, I think it's totally acceptable to not include in this letter where the funding needs to come from.
I would be okay with the Yellow Line Bridge project budget, because I mean, does that project involve like mitigation funding like some of the other shutdowns they've had? So I mean, could we say that this could be funded by mitigation dollars from that, or are we saying that basically that the project is that the projections are too high for this and there's going to be money left over so you could use that for this? Or
and they haven't discussed with us mitigation yet for Yellow Line Bridge, but they've offered that this is probably one of the potential options.
Okay, so I would be comfortable saying that we think this should be funded out of, that this should be a mitigation measure as a result of that project, to then see if that service should continue, and then perhaps leave out the other piece of it, and maybe then Transportation Commission may evaluate that after WMATA's had their work session, and you all as staff have more information to provide to them, and then they can decide if that's something appropriate they want to ask for in advocating for this service restoration. But I think the main message here is the positive impact it's going to have to Alexandria riders who need and should be able to rely on this service, and I think your letter does that. So I'll open this up to comments from others. So if not, I would ask for a motion to adopt the letter, and if members are inclined to include in the motion amendment to incorporate the change that I articulated.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the letter as presented.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion, a second. But Steve, does that include the, do you want to leave in the value add comment, or?
Yes, I think that's appropriate to put in.
Okay. So we have a motion, and the second, was that with the understanding that the value add would remain in?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, if I made my case for taking it out, but if others would like to leave it in, then I will go along with that, because I want to advocate for the service, and so we'll leave it in then, or we'll vote on that, and I will support it. That's staying in. So all in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
So we always have an opportunity for board members to report on other commissions and groups that they're a part of, anything that would be helpful for us to know as we set transit policy. So I'll go ahead and open the floor for any announcements that members have. Okay. I'll just make one briefly, which is many of you know I serve concurrently on the Commission on Aging. My term was up in December. I was going to retire from the commission, but we've had a tremendous, I've been on there 9 years. We've had a tremendous turnover on the commission, and the Director of Aging Adult Services is retiring, as well as the staff member who supported our commission for many years. So I was convinced to apply for one more term, and then was immediately told that I get to co-chair the Commission's Transportation Committee. So I'm looking forward to that. And I know we will, as a result of that, there will be a lot of opportunities for Dash to come and present to our commission on things that are important to us. So I think there's perhaps a silver lining to that. But I guess I'm staying on that commission for another 3 years. Is there anybody else? All right, Josh, we'll go ahead and move to the general manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. It's good to see you. My report is brief this evening, but I will talk to you a little bit about where we are from the operational standpoint. As you all are aware, we were forced to scale our service back to a Saturday enhanced service level, which represents a normal Saturday service profile plus our 100 routes, which are routes that are designated to typically run only during peak periods during the weekdays or weekdays in general. So we have now been operating that since the Monday of the snowstorm, which further complicated operations, but I want to give kudos to the team and everyone involved in what they did. It was a complex day and challenging one, but everybody made it home safely, and we were able to dig all the buses out. So proud of that. But anyway, regarding our operational status, we are continuing to operate on the Saturday service. Just to give you some context here a little bit, and I'm going to turn to my other screen so I have my notes. Forgive me when I'm looking between two different screens. But since December 22nd, we've had 30 confirmed positive cases within the workforce, and we have more than that quarantining unconfirmed cases. So, you know, we are experiencing what everyone else in the country is experiencing, but we remain confident that we can sustain the Saturday service profile, and ultimately believe in maintaining that to the best of our extent possible, because it is a published schedule. And so it allows our riders to have a schedule to reference, to look at, to read and hold in their hands as they navigate the system. So I will continue to keep you all updated. As of right now, there is no change in the foreseeable future to that. We are anticipating, as is everyone, the holiday wave, as they call it, the second wave that is slated to arrive later this month. And the public health officials seem to be indicating that sometime in February, we will see this start to come back down. So we're all looking forward to that day, and we're continuing to monitor that. The other item that I just wanted to inform you all of, this is a save the date. And certainly I hope we're not dealing with another wave then, because that will really throw a wrench in things. But we are proud to be hosting once again the 2022 Virginia Statewide Bus Rodeo, and it is spelled ROADEO. That is not a typo. And this is an event that will bring together transit systems from all across the Commonwealth to compete in a driving skills competition, a maintenance competition, and for the top driver and top maintenance personnel in the state to be to receive their trophies. We last, I don't know what the date was we last hosted this, but it was shortly after this facility was open. So it's been quite a few years. It was definitely before I was here. I have been a host of a rodeo in the past, and just want to say it is a great event. It is super positive for the workforce and for our drivers and our mechanics. So we would invite all of you to be a part of that in any way, shape, or form that so interests you and you feel comfortable doing. But I would just ask that you notate those dates, subject to change if there was some kind of a major change from the COVID perspective. It will be a safe event in the sense that we will mandate vaccinations and so forth in accordance with what Dash is already doing. But it will be bringing quite a few people to Alexandria. And I know that our hosts, not only here at Dash, but the local hotels and whatnot are happy to have this happening. So those are my two updates, and I will certainly welcome any questions. All right, Mr. Chair, I see no questions, and we'll turn it back over to you if you want to advance to finance.
All right, we'll go ahead and recognize our new finance director, Edward. This is your first time presenting to us. Welcome, and we got to meet you a little bit last month, and look forward to your presentation. And
thank you. Just welcome to the board. We want to wish everyone a happy new year. Getting into my presentation, I just want to lead off that I'm still wrapping my head around some of these things and what I'll be presenting in the coming months in format as I take to kind of improve and look at ways to present some of this information. To start out, November year to date, we are looking at a deficit of just over $1.5 million year to date. But I do want to highlight that the year-end projected surplus is now looking at 150K, year-end is looking at 150K surplus. I want to address some of what we've presented so far can be looked at from the lens of timing and structure of the budget, explaining some of the year-to-date deficits that we've seen so far. Several items, as they're presented on a monthly basis, were straight-lined. So looking at the year-end number is always going to be more accurate than looking at the any single month. Some of them, as I mentioned, can be tied to how some of the things in the budget were straight-lined. Last month, for example, a question came up on why the October wages were so much higher than what they were in the budget. And that's because the wages, as it's presented in the packet currently, is straight lined across 12 months. So it doesn't take into account months like October that had 3 payroll periods. A couple other items that are in the budget and tied to the structure and timing of things that are not straight line and so aren't necessarily taken into account are some of the reimbursements tied to some of our grants. So the I-395 grant, for example, will be reimbursements against wages that were from looking at a monthly perspective to start beginning in December. They'll actually start beginning in January. So we'll start to see those now as I've started to work on getting the reimbursements for September through December. So because we just got the kind of the green light on going ahead with that. So can explain some of why a month, any individual month as separate to the whole year can explain some of the seen the things that I want to highlight. I just mentioned the I-395 reimbursements. Those will start to begin in January. That's going to be total 4.3 million. A lot of that is going to go against wages, which is why when you look at the wages from a year-to-date perspective, they are significantly over in operation. But when you look at the year end, that overage really only goes is just under $500,000, where if you look at it right now, it's sitting at about 1.3. That obviously doesn't explain all of why it's over. I'll get into those reasons in a second, but I did want to highlight some of the timing in the budget of some of the reimbursements and why, when you look at a year-end perspective, it's so much different from a year-to-date perspective. I want to also highlight that the TRIP funding that we've been talking about and has now been, our recommendation has been approved by CTV. That wasn't taken into account in any of the previous year-end projections. We've now added that into the year-end projections, which is why now we now have a year-end projected surplus rather than a year-end deficit. And if you can advance the slide, I'll get into a couple of the other things I wanted to highlight. Highlighting year-to-date deficits that are not necessarily part of the structure and timing of things, but have contributed to year-to-date items. Operations over time, that continues to be high. A lot of that is tied to essentially the shortage in drivers that we have. So it's that overtime will remain an issue until we can fill those roles. We're about, I believe, about 15 drivers short of where we need to be to maintain the expanded service. So that is one kind of contributing factor to the deficit that isn't necessarily tied to the structure and timing budget issues that I previously mentioned. As has been mentioned in other months, fueling, that fuel prices, that continues to be an issue that has come in higher than forecast. That has been discussed in previous months as well. Lastly, I do want to highlight the advertising revenue. Each month up until November, you would have seen no revenue coming in. We've just started to see that revenue. I expect that to start to materialize. That is in the forecast for 180,000. I believe the contract that we have has a minimum of 100,000. So even if we don't hit that ceiling, you'll start to see it pick up. I think right now it's only at about 11,000 so far, and that just started to materialize in the month of November. One thing I will point out is you look at the monthly numbers, the month to date numbers, is the timing and the straight lining aspects that I mentioned. You'll see kind of the flip side of that a little bit on revenue, even though we knew that fares were going to end after end when they did. That is also straight lined. So you will see in future months that kind of year end, the year to date will true up closer to the projected year end, but the impacts on the revenue side are far less than the cost implications of that timing. So those are the major items that I really wanted to highlight. Again, as I start to dive into the budget a bit more and wrap my head around all these figures, sorry, as I start to wrap my head around some of these figures, I'll be adjusting some of the way that some of these numbers are presented, and I welcome any feedback or requests on things that you would like to see presented as we move forward. With that, I'll open it up to questions.
Edward, before you take questions, I'll just note that we deactivated your video because you were lagging a little bit. So we can hear you, we just can't see you at the moment. There was just some lagging.
I noticed that, and I tried to react. And noticed that it had been deactivated. So my apologies.
You're fine. You're there. So.
I want to talk about the operation, the overtime, I guess, relative to the year-end projections. It seems like we're still running quite a bit over on wages and other payroll items, I guess. And I just wanted to get a sense of how we might bring that under control, because we were still, if I recall correctly, last month we were about $1 million over just for the month, and this month we're 300,000 over. So given that the monthly budget is only 1.1 million, I guess I'm just wondering, how are we gonna get there in terms of the year-end budget?
Yeah, so the item last month, that can absolutely be explained kind of by the straight line approach of dividing the wages over 12 months and just straight lining it, last month being, or October being a 3 payroll month. That explains why it was so much significantly over. Yes, looking at November, it is still significantly over. A lot of that does tie to overtime. Off the top of my head, I don't have the exact proportion of that is overtime, but then some of that can also be discussed by the anticipated reimbursements of these grants that will start to be realized starting with the January actual. So some of these the costs were straight lined without that those reimbursements necessarily being taken into account until the future months. So as we get close, once those grant reimbursements start to materialize and you start to see those, you should start to see the opposite variance where wages are lower than the budget on a monthly basis.
Let me ask about the status of advertising. So we've gotten a little bit of revenue. Now, I must confess, I haven't yet seen a dash bus that's wrapped yet. So could you talk a little more about the schedule and sort of about what the level of interest has been in advertising on our buses?
So I can touch briefly on that. I'm still getting a little bit more information on our actual contract and only recently started to get more information about the forecast other than that, knowing that it is going to pick up. So that is an item that I can dive into and get a little more information. Talking to our team, I do know that it's anticipated to start picking up, and we only really saw the actuals materialize starting this month. So my apologies for not having a more in-depth answer to that. It's an item that is one of the ones I've just really started to dive into recently.
We can talk about more about that next month. But I'm really more curious about, well, also obviously if we're going to get the revenue that we had forecast, but I'm also curious because as we begin to see our buses wrapped, the community will take notice of that. And so just wanted to understand kind of what the timeline was for some of that, starting to see some of that, the impact of just from an aesthetic standpoint.
Mr. Chair, I can speak a little bit more to that program, and since it predates Edward and Raymond may also, but we don't. Our contract does not include bus wraps, so there won't be any wrapped ad buses. It does include side and rear. There were some stipulations we made about windows because we had gotten feedback from the public previously when we have wrapped buses and covered the windows. So we have a number of constraints out there and associated with our policy. There have been some on the rears of the buses. I can only speculate that it's a new market. Our system is a new market for the vendor. It is also a weak market because of COVID. I don't think that companies are spending enormous amounts of money on transit advertising, especially when transit is not even running as much as we would like to be. But as Edward mentioned, there is a minimum revenue stipulation in the contract with the contractor. So even if they don't sell, beyond that, they have a minimum they have to apply. And as the year goes on and as Edward becomes more familiar, we can adjust that in the projections to see kind of, what that minimum is as compared to what we are anticipating. But going into advertising, we all knew that it was a wild card, and it was unclear as to how that would truly perform, especially in the first year, I would suspect. So.
Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else? All right, we will go ahead and just come back on my other computer to be have the agenda page. We'll go ahead into the planning reports, and so Martin's going to present on ridership and a couple of grant applications.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good evening, members of the board. I have two items on tonight's docket. First one is a ridership update for informational purposes. This follows a more detailed ridership update that was provided last month's meeting. This month's update is based on ridership data through the month of November. So it does not yet include the impact of this Omicron surge that we've seen over the last few weeks. So I just wanted to say that up front because we do expect that these numbers will take quite a bit of hit over the last couple of weeks between the holidays, the snow, and the Omicron surge. But the good news is we have really strong ridership growth that has been showing since the new network and free fares were launched. This is a modified version of the bar graph that I had shown previously. I think it's a little cleaner and easier to follow with a line graph. But basically, the blue line, this represents total monthly ridership for Dash throughout the fiscal year for the last 4 fiscal years. The blue line is FY 2019, which can kind of be thought of as the last kind of normal year that we had, even though that year wasn't even all that normal with some of the things we had going on, but compared to now, it was. So FY 19 is shown in blue, FY 20 is orange, which you can see kind of tracked along that same normal seasonal curve until it hit the pandemic in March of 2020. You can see that big orange line falls off there. And then the gray is FY 2021, which was flat throughout most of the year during the pandemic, just over 100,000 boardings per month. It's interesting to note that the seasonal fluctuation really is not shown in that year. So I think that's kind of interesting as kind of our baseline customers that really rely and depend upon Dash service through rain or shine or heat or snow. Those are our diehard customers. So it's kind of interesting to see that as the baseline and how that didn't really change much throughout that year. But a more recent interest is the gold line, which shows FY 22 numbers, at least through November. You can see that we did increase up to about 250,000 in October, and we were close to 250,000 in November. And you can see that gold line is getting very close to the blue and orange lines, which represent our pre-COVID ridership. So at least up through November, we were fast approaching the pre-COVID levels. And that's further shown on the next slide, which reflects the percentages of pre-COVID service and percentage of pre-COVID ridership. I showed this graph last month, but I have updated it since. You can see the blue line is ridership. So for most of 2021, first 8 months, we were at about 40 to 45% of pre-COVID ridership. With the transition to the new network and free fares, we jumped in September to about 65% of pre-COVID ridership. October was 75% of pre-COVID ridership, and now you can see November was 82% of pre-COVID ridership. And again, that pre-COVID ridership is based on 2018, 2019 ridership levels. So really continuing to see that trend, although with the caveat that we would expect this will take a dip in December, given everything that's been going on. Next slide, please, Josh. Actually, I'll hold there. Any questions on the ridership update? Okay, hearing none, I'll move on to item 6B, which is a request for board consideration of approval of 2 grant resolutions. These are our annual FY23 DRPT grant applications. There are 2 applications this year. The first is for a transit recovery marketing program. This is a new program that DRPT initiated last year that seeks to provide funding for advertising and promoting transit usage, kind of a return to transit whenever we can get out of this COVID situation. So we are applying for $35,000 that will be used towards ad buys and the like. There's a local match of 20%, which would be $7,000, which would come out of our general budget. So that's the first grant. The second grant is a transit intern program grant. This is a program that we've applied for the last at least 5 years running. I think it may be longer. Had a lot of success with it, with having young professionals that have gained experience and gone on to full-time roles. We've actually have 2 current full-time employees that were former interns that have worked out really well. So we're continuing to apply for this for FY23 in the amount of $40,000, and it does require that local match of 20%, which would be $8,000. So those are the 2 grants we're applying for this year. Happy to take any questions.
Martin, I'll echo that we have had some excellent interns who have come through that program, and it's really not a lot of investment from us, but really a great opportunity for people who want to work in the transit industry or marketing in general for that matter. I'll ask if we can vote on these as a block unless there's a need to separate them. So I'll ask if there is a motion to approve the grant applications as presented to us in our packet.
Mr. Chairman, I propose that we adopt the 2 program grant applications as presented.
Moved by Steve.
Second.
Is there a second? Second by Ian. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, hearing none, passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
So at this point, we've
So David, we can't hear you when you face away
Oh.
from the computer, sorry.
Thank you. Well, you have it up on the slide, so I don't need to reference my agenda either. But the next ATC Board of Directors meeting will be Wednesday, February 9th at 5:30 p.m. I will just indicate, I am aware that council was to vote last night on extending the state of emergency for COVID through the end of June. So I presume, and staff can jump in if they've received any guidance on this, that would also mean that our meetings would be able to continue remote until then. Have we heard anything from the clerk about that?
Chair Kaplan, I have not. This is Beth. I have not, but I will follow up again.
Sure. No, they may be getting to that. I would assume that our February meeting will still be virtual given the environment that we're in, but whether the state of emergency then requires us to decide like we did in the fall, basically, to evaluate and to determine if we want to continue meeting virtually or if we would just continue to meet virtually. And so we'll, I'm sure, be hearing more about that in the coming days. So expect that we'll be virtual again. Is there any further business to come before the board? If not, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Linda. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jim. All in favor? Aye.
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 Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you all.
Good night.